We see the world through stories, through films, books, headlines, photographs, memories, and myths. But every story has another layer, one that's often forgotten, overlooked, or deliberately left out. Welcome to Behind the Curtain. Let's take a closer look. Imagine walking through a museum. You stop in front of a painting that's been hanging there for 400 years. At first, it looks ordinary. Then someone points to a tiny detail in the corner, a face hidden in the shadows, a signature disguised as a cloud, a symbol no one noticed for centuries. Suddenly, you're not looking at the same painting anymore, you're looking at a conversation, one that began hundreds of years before you were born. Hidden messages like these are everywhere in movies, video games, books, websites, software, theme parks, even inside the operating system running your computer right now. Most people call them Easter eggs, tiny secrets deliberately placed there by their creators. Some are jokes, some are tributes, some are acts of rebellion. Some exist simply because someone thought maybe one person will find this, and remarkably, someone usually does. There are entire communities dedicated to finding these hidden messages. People who pause movies frame by frame, who inspect video game maps for invisible doors, who read source code looking for secret commands, who spend years solving puzzles that most people don't even realize exist. Which raises a strange question. Why? Why would filmmakers spend weeks creating details that 99% of audiences will never notice? Why would programmers hide games inside software? Why would architects bury symbols inside buildings? Why would artists spend months painting details that disappear into the background? At first, the answer seems obvious because it's fun. But the more you look, the stranger it becomes. Because Easter eggs are older than computers, older than cinema, older than books. Long before programmers hid secret games inside software, artists were hiding signatures inside paintings, architects were carving jokes into cathedrals, authors were leaving coded messages inside manuscripts. For thousands of years, humans have been hiding things for one another, not because they had to, because they wanted to. And perhaps the strangest part isn't that creators keep hiding these messages, it's that we keep looking for them, even when we don't know they're there. Somewhere along the way, finding hidden things became one of our favorite ways to experience stories. So, where did this tradition begin? Surprisingly, not in Hollywood, not at Disney, not even with the internet. It began because one programmer wanted credit for his own work, and in doing so, he accidentally created an entirely new language. Today, video games are made by thousands of people. Entire studios spend years building a single title. When the game is finished, the credits can last nearly half an hour. Every artist, every programmer, every composer, every tester, every intern, their names appear on screen. In the late 1970s, things worked very differently. At Atari, the company that helped create the home video game industry, developers were anonymous, not accidentally, deliberately. Executives worried that if players knew who made their favorite games, rival companies would simply hide them away. So programmers weren't allowed to sign their work. No names, no recognition, no public credit. The game belonged to Atari. The people who created it were expected to remain invisible. One of those programmers was Warren Robinet. In 1978, Robinet was developing a fantasy adventure game for the Atari 2600. By modern standards, it was astonishingly simple. A tiny square represented the player. Dragons looked like oversized ducks. Castles were little more than blocks of color. And yet, adventure would become one of the most influential games ever made. It introduced ideas that players now take for granted: exploration, inventory, hidden rooms, the feeling that there might always be something just beyond the edge of the map. Robinett spent months creating the game almost entirely by himself. When it was finished, Atari prepared to release it, without mentioning his name anywhere. Robinett wasn't angry because he wanted fame. He was angry because he wanted authorship. Painters signed their canvases, writers put their names on books, filmmakers appeared in the credits. Why should software be any different? So he made a decision. If Atari wouldn't credit him, he would do it himself. Quietly, secretly. He hid a room inside the game. Finding it was almost impossible unless you knew exactly what to do. Players first had to pick up an invisible pixel, so small it was nearly impossible to notice, then carry it through a maze, past walls that looked solid, into a hidden chamber that wasn't marked on any map. Inside, bright block letters appeared across the screen, created by Warren Robinett. That was it. No treasure, no extra level, no reward, just a name. The first modern Easter egg wasn't created to entertain players. It was an act of defiance, a programmer refusing to disappear inside his own work. For months, no one at Atari noticed. Eventually, a teenager wrote to the company after discovering the hidden room. Executives panicked. Someone had hidden unauthorized code inside one of their biggest games. Their first instinct was to remove them, but by then, thousands of cartridges had already been manufactured. Changing the game would have delayed production and cost far more than Atari was willing to spend, so the hidden room stayed. Instead of treating it as an embarrassment, Atari's marketing department made an unexpected decision. They gave it a name. Borrowing from the tradition of Easter egg hunts, they called it an Easter egg. The term stuck. Within a few years, developers everywhere were hiding their own secrets: tiny jokes, secret rooms, hidden characters, personal signatures. Little gifts left behind for curious players. But here's what's fascinating. Robinett hadn't invented the idea of hiding messages. He had simply reinvented something humans had been doing for centuries. Because long before software developers buried secrets inside games, artists, architects, and writers were already speaking to future audiences in exactly the same way. They just used paint instead of pixels. It's tempting to think Easter eggs belong to the digital age, that they began with programmers, spread through video games, and eventually found their way into movies and the internet. But Warren Robinett didn't invent the idea. He simply gave it a new home. Because if you travel back far enough, you discover that humans have always hidden messages inside the things they create. Long before computer code, there was stone. Take a walk through almost any medieval cathedral in Europe. Look beyond the stained glass windows and soaring ceilings. Ignore the grand sculptures meant for everyone to admire. Instead, look underneath the choir seats, along the edges of the roof, high above the entrance where almost nobody ever looks. You will find tiny carvings, monkeys playing musical instruments, a rabbit hunting a man, grotesque faces pulling impossible expressions, snails fighting knights, cats chasing mice, entire miniature worlds hidden in places where almost no visitor would ever notice them. Some were jokes between craftsmen, some were political satire, some carried religious symbolism that's still debated today. Others we simply don't understand anymore. They're messages from people whose names have been forgotten, waiting for someone curious enough to ask why they were there. Even the craftsmen themselves left hidden traces. Stonemasons often carved personal marks into the blocks they shaped. At first glance, they looked like simple geometric symbols: a cross, a triangle, a circle cut by a single line. But these weren't decorations, they were signatures. Every mason had a unique mark. It identified their work, helped calculate their wages, and quietly recorded their presence inside buildings that would outlive them by centuries. Most visitors never notice them, yet thousands remain hidden inside churches and castles across Europe. Tiny reminders that every monumental building was assembled by individual human hands. Painters did much the same. Some slipped self portraits into crowded scenes, others disguised friends and patrons among biblical figures. Sometimes the only way an artist could sign a commission was to hide themselves somewhere inside it. Michelangelo is believed to have painted his own likeness into the Last Judgment. Jan van Eyck famously wrote on one of his paintings, "Jan van Eyck was here," not painted prominently at the bottom like a modern signature, but integrated into the artwork itself, almost like graffiti left behind for attentive viewers. Centuries later, people are still discovering details that earlier generations overlooked. not because they were invisible, because nobody thought to look. Even books carried hidden messages. Before the printing press, scribes copied manuscripts entirely by hand. Some spent months, others spent years. Occasionally, after copying hundreds of painstaking pages, a weary scribe would leave a tiny note at the end. Thank God it's finished. Or, whoever steals this book, may his hands wither. One medieval copyist simply wrote, writing is excessive drudgery. It's strangely comforting. Across 1,000 years, someone doing repetitive work still complained exactly the way we do. These weren't meant for the person commissioning the manuscript, these were messages for another reader, someone, someday, who might smile upon finding them. In many ways, that's exactly what an Easter egg still is. Not information, not decoration, a moment of unexpected connection between creator and audience. And that's what makes them so fascinating. Because from medieval cathedrals to Atari cartridges, the technology changes. The instinct doesn't. People keep hiding little pieces of themselves inside their work. The real mystery isn't how they do it, it's why. Why leave a joke on the ceiling of a cathedral? Or hide your name inside a video game? Or place a truck in every Pixar movie, knowing that most viewers will never notice? The answer has surprisingly little to do with the secret itself and almost everything to do with the person who discovers it. Imagine you're watching a movie for the 10th time. Everything feels familiar. You know every line, every scene, every twist. Then something catches your eye. A newspaper headline in the background, a familiar license plate, a character from another film walking past for less than a second. You've seen this movie for years. How did you never notice it? For a brief moment, it feels as though the film has changed. Of course, it hasn't. You have. Psychologists have a term for moments like this, not for Easter eggs specifically, but for the feeling they create. It's called the pleasure of discovery. Our brains are prediction machines. Every second, they're trying to make sense of the world by spotting patterns. Most of the time, this happens automatically. You recognize faces, read words, navigate streets. You rarely notice your brain doing the work, but every now and then it stumbles across something unexpected, a hidden connection, a detail that suddenly makes sense, and when it does, your brain rewards you. The reward isn't money or status, it's something much simpler, a small burst of satisfaction, the feeling of solving a puzzle, of understanding something that was invisible just moments ago. That tiny emotional reward is powerful. It's one of the reasons crossword puzzles are enjoyable, why escape rooms have become so popular, why detectives fascinate us, why children instinctively play hide and seek. The pleasure isn't just in finding something, it's in proving to yourself that it was there all along. Easter eggs tap into exactly the same instinct, but they add another layer because, unlike a crossword puzzle, an Easter egg was hidden by another person. Someone chose that exact location. Someone decided how difficult it should be to find. Someone imagined the exact moment another human being would eventually discover it. In other words, an Easter egg isn't just a puzzle, it's communication. A conversation stretched across time. The creator says, I wonder if anyone will notice this. And years later, a stranger quietly replies, I did. That's an unusually intimate interaction. The two people may have never met. They may not even live in the same century. Yet for one brief moment, they're thinking the same thought. That's why Easter eggs often feel personal, not because the secret itself is important, but because finding it feels like you've been invited backstage, like you've accidentally joined an inside joke. Humans have always loved inside jokes. Anthropologists often point out that shared knowledge creates communities. A family has stories only they understand. Friends develop phrases that make no sense to outsiders. Entire professions communicate through references invisible to everyone else. Knowing the reference becomes part of belonging. Easter eggs work in exactly the same way. Finding one doesn't just reward curiosity, it creates membership. You become one of the people who knows, one of the people who noticed. That feeling is so satisfying that entire communities have formed around it. Millions of people now spend their free time searching for hidden details in films, games, books, and websites, not because there's a prize, but because discovery itself becomes a reward. and eventually something curious happened. Creators realized audiences weren't just enjoying Easter eggs, they were actively looking for them. Once that happened, hiding secrets stopped being a private joke. It became part of the experience itself. No studio understood the transformation better than Pixar. They didn't just hide Easter eggs, they turned them into a language that audiences are still decoding almost 30 years later. If Warren Robinett accidentally invented the modern Easter egg, Pixar perfected it. Today, watching a Pixar film has become a kind of treasure hunt. Some viewers pay as much attention to the background as they do to the story itself, not because they are distracted, because they have learned that Pixar is always hiding something. A yellow ball with blue stripe and a red star, a beat-up delivery truck from Toy Story, the mysterious code A113. Once you notice them, you start seeing them everywhere. But here's the interesting part. None of these references make the story better. Woody doesn't become a stronger character because a truck appears in the background. Finding A113 doesn't unlock the plot. The Easter eggs are completely unnecessary, so why keep putting them there? To answer that, we have to understand what Pixar actually is. Pixar wasn't founded by Disney. It began as a small computer graphics division that eventually became an independent animation studio before being acquired by Disney in 2006. In its early years, the studio was tiny. Animators worked side by side. Artists moved from one project to another. Everyone knew everyone else. The films weren't treated as isolated productions. They felt like chapters in one long creative conversation. That conversation spilled into the movies themselves. Take A113. It appears in almost every Pixar film. A classroom number, a license plate, a train, a courtroom, a room number. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes it flashes by in less than a second. To audiences, it's just a strange combination of letters and numbers. To the artists, it means something entirely different. A113 was a classroom at the California Institute of the Arts where many Pixar animators studied graphic design and character animation. It was the room where careers began, the place where lifelong friendships were formed. Every time they stepped those four characters into a film, they weren't creating a puzzle, they were saying hello to each other. It's less of an Easter egg and more of a shared memory. The same is true of the Luxo Ball. Long before Toy Story, Pixar released a short film called Luxo Jr. It featured a desk lamp playing with a small yellow ball decorated with a blue stripe and a red star. The animation was groundbreaking. More importantly, it became Pixar's identity. The lamp eventually became the studio's logo. The ball became its quiet companion. So the animators kept bringing it back, not because audiences demanded it, but because it reminded them where they had started. Then, there's perhaps the most famous Pixar Easter egg of all, the Pizza Planet truck, a faded yellow delivery truck first seen in Toy Story. Since then, versions of that truck have appeared in almost every Pixar film. Sometimes it's driving through a city, sometimes it's parked in the background, sometimes it's barely visible at all. Fans began treating each appearance like a challenge. Could they find it before the credits rolled? Pixar noticed, and instead of stopping, they leaned into it. Finding the truck became part of watching the movie. Suddenly, the audience wasn't just consuming the story, they were participating in it. That's an important shift. Early Easter eggs were private jokes hidden by creators. Pixar turned them into an ongoing relationship with the audience. Every new film arrived with an unspoken invitation: see what you can find. Other studios quickly realized how powerful that invitation was. Marvel began hiding references to future films. Television shows rewarded loyal viewers with callbacks that lasted for years. Video games became filled with secret rooms, hidden bosses, and impossible achievements. The Easter egg had evolved. It was no longer simply a hidden message, it had become a reason to watch again, and again, and again. But something else changed too. As audiences became better at finding hidden details, they also became better at imagining them. Sometimes they discovered connections the creators had genuinely intended. Other times they saw patterns that had never existed at all. And once millions of people began searching every frame for hidden meaning, the line between an Easter egg and a conspiracy theory started becoming surprisingly thin. There's an old saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. The same thing happens with Easter eggs. Once audiences learned that creators were hiding secrets, they began expecting them everywhere. Every stage number, every background object, every line of dialogue, every costume, every camera angle. Nothing was too small to investigate. And thanks to the internet, millions of people could investigate together. In the past, discovering an Easter egg was mostly a solitary experience. You noticed something, maybe you told a friend. Today, someone posts a screenshot online, and within minutes, thousands of strangers are analyzing it together. A blurry reflection becomes a debate, a random prop becomes a clue, a passing line becomes evidence for an entire theory. Entire communities have formed around this process. One of the most famous examples is Gravity Falls. On the surface, it's an animated comedy about two children spending the summer with their eccentric great uncle. But every episode hides something: encrypted messages in the credits, symbols hidden in the background, secret alphabets, codes that viewers can actually solve. Creator Alex Hirsch didn't simply hide references, he designed puzzles. The audience wasn't just watching the show, they were collaborating with it. Online forums exploded with theories. People worked together across countries and time zones, decoding ciphers and piecing together mysteries that stretched across multiple seasons. The Easter eggs weren't distractions from the story, they were part of the story. Video games took this even further. Series like Five Nights at Freddy's became famous not only for their gameplay, but for the mysteries buried beneath it: fragments of newspaper articles, cryptic phone calls, tiny visual details. Nothing ever seemed to provide a complete answer. Instead, fans assembled timelines, argued over clues, and produced documentaries lasting hours. In many cases, the search became more popular than the game itself. Then there are creators who actively encourage this relationship. Few have embraced hidden clues as enthusiastically as Taylor Swift. Album booklets, music videos, social media posts, capital letters hidden inside lyrics, objects arranged in suspicious ways, numbers that appear repeatedly. Her fans don't simply consume new releases, they investigate them. Every single Instagram post can generate thousands of theories within hours. Sometimes those theories are correct, sometimes they're spectacularly wrong. But either way, the hunt has become part of the experience. The audience has been invited to play. Marvel Studios learned a similar lesson. As its cinematic universe expanded, viewers began examining every frame for hints about future films. A newspaper headline, a mysterious silhouette, an object sitting quietly in the background. Some really were carefully planted clues, others were just set decoration. It hardly mattered. The audience had learned that paying attention might be rewarded, and that possibility changed the way they watched. But there's a catch. Our brains don't naturally stop looking once they find a pattern. They become even better at finding the next one. Psychologists call this pattern recognition. It's one of the most important abilities our species ever developed. Recognizing tracks in the mud, reading changes in the weather, identifying edible plants. Seeing patterns helped our ancestors survive. But like every useful ability, it has a side effect. Sometimes we find patterns that aren't actually there. We see faces in clouds, animals in the stars, connections between completely unrelated events. Psychologists even have a name for this tendency: apophenia, our instinct to perceive meaningful connections in unrelated things. Normally, it's harmless. Sometimes it's even creative. It's what allows artists to imagine new ideas and scientists to notice unexpected relationships. But when it combines with a culture built around Easter eggs, something fascinating happens. The search for hidden meaning can begin to outgrow the creator's original intent. Fans don't just uncover secrets anymore, they invent them. And occasionally, those invented secrets become far more famous than the real ones, which raises an uncomfortable question. When does curiosity become obsession? When does looking closely stop revealing hidden truths and start creating illusions? Because sometimes the greatest Easter eggs of all were never hidden in the first place. Perhaps the most famous example began in 1969. A rumor spread across college campuses that Paul McCartney had died years earlier and had been secretly replaced by a lookalike. The evidence seemed endless: Play Beatles record backwards, study the album covers, count the flowers, look at the license plates, notice who's barefoot. Suddenly, every photograph became a clue, every lyric became a confession, every coincidence became proof. Fans spent months uncovering hidden messages. The Beatles, who had hidden nothing of the sort, could only watch as an entire mythology grew around their music. It sounds absurd today, but it reveals something profound. Once people believe a secret exists, they become remarkably good at finding evidence for it, even when there isn't any. The same thing happens constantly in modern media. An actor wears a particular color, surely it references another character. A random number appears on a door. Someone discovers that same number appeared in another film 15 years earlier. Was it planned, or was it simply reused because someone in the art department liked it? Often we never find out, because after it really spreads online, the creator's intention almost stops mattering. The story belongs to the audience now. Sometimes creators even play along. The mystery grows larger than the truth ever could. In a strange way, that's exactly what makes Easter eggs so powerful. They invite participation. Once people begin looking, they don't always stop when the hidden messages run out. They keep searching, keep connecting, keep imagining. Sometimes those imagined connections become richer than anything the creator originally intended. And perhaps that's not a failure. Perhaps that's storytelling doing what storytelling has always done. A story leaves its creator. It enters someone else's imagination. From there, it grows into something new. After all, every great myth in history has accumulated details its original teller never invented. Every legend gains new versions. Every folktale changes with the people who pass it along. Maybe Easter eggs work the same way. They begin as hidden messages, but eventually they become invitations. Invitations to look more closely, to ask questions, to notice details, to believe that the world might contain more than what first meets the eye, because that's the real gift hidden inside every Easter egg. Not the secret itself, the habit of paying attention. When Warren Robinett hid his name inside adventure, he wasn't trying to start a tradition. He simply wanted someone, anyone, to know he had been there. Nearly 50 years later, millions of people still search for hidden messages, not because they expect treasure, but because discovery itself is rewarding. Because every Easter egg carries the same quiet promise that somewhere another human being cared enough to leave something behind. In an age where we are encouraged to scroll faster, watch quicker, and move on to the next thing, Easter eggs ask us to do the opposite: slow down, look again, pay attention, because the smallest details often tell the biggest stories. Maybe that's why this tradition has survived for centuries. From stonemasons carving their marks into cathedral walls, to programmers hiding secret rooms inside video games, to filmmakers slipping tiny references into the corner of a frame, the message has always been the same: I was here. And every time someone discovers one, across the years, sometimes across centuries, another person silently answers, I found you. Maybe that's what Easter eggs have been all along. Not puzzles, not marketing, not clever tricks, but tiny reminders that behind every painting, every film, every game, and every story, there was a person hoping someone else would care enough to look. Sometimes the greatest stories are hidden in plain sight. They're hidden in the people who choose to notice. Every story leaves behind something outside the frame. Sometimes it's a forgotten person, sometimes it's a missing chapter, and sometimes it's a part that changes how we understand everything else. If this story surprised you, imagine how many others are still waiting to be uncovered. Until next time, stay curious.